Well, good morning and welcome to Wisdom of the Soul, brought to you by the Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. When you're searching on the internet, whether it's our YouTube channel or your favorite podcast player or anything else, Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. My primary website is michaelbenner.com. I don't mention it often, but I probably should. I do have 3 or 4 spots a week that I hold open for a free intake session, a private, personal, one-on-one intensive, really, or an introduction to the counseling and training programs that I do. So if you're ever interested in that, we work mostly with self-awareness and anxiety disorders. I do couples counseling. I just started a couple the other day. And of course, it's all confidential. I won't talk about you on the Zoom class or the radio or anything like that. And think of it as a Goldilocks solution. That's what I call it. It's like right in the middle between psychotherapy and life coaching. It's much more comprehensive than life coaching. Now, most life coaches took a weekend training and call themselves a life coach. I've been doing this 40 years. And I think you probably know I did a breakthrough self-awareness training for the Orange County Sheriff's Academies for several years, Orange County, California, which I'm real proud of. And worked with hundreds of clients personally. And maybe you, if you want to try that free intro, just go to michaelbenner.com. And there's a big red circle. You can't miss it. Click on that and you'll be able to schedule yourself. And again, we're on all podcast players, and we have a YouTube channel as well. I really appreciate it when you can join us live, so a special howdy to folks who are with us this morning. Happy Easter, Passover, Ramadan, they all sort of come together, as is the unrest in the Middle East, unfortunately. And as you probably know, especially if you're here live and getting our newsletter, I want to talk about sacred activism this week. To be a spiritual activist or practice sacred activism is not to get involved in politics. Before we do our opening meditation, I want to set the tone. The idea that we have to look at all of our issues, social issues, issues of war and peace, all of our problems of various levels and tiers of government through a political lens is absurd. This is an enigma that I discovered as a journalist early on in my career. I graduated college with a degree in journalism and broadcast management. I worked my way through college as a broadcast journalist, actually. I waived, I was able to waive a number of college classes because I was already working in the field. But the idea that everything is political is promoted by politicians and accepted by people who don't really want responsibility for educating themselves and finding alternative ways of taking action. I think the same thing could be said for religion. In many ways, religion, organized religion, is for people who don't have the time or are not willing to take the time to study theology and philosophy on their own, which is not a bad thing. You know, you're busy. You don't have hours every week to devote to the study of political issues or religious issues. So you vote for a politician and wash your hands of it, or you leave it to the church and you line up with one of 100 different denominations. Actually, I Googled not long ago how many denominations call themselves Christian, just Christian alone. And I thought I'd get 30 or 40. Google says there are 43,000 denominations of Christianity. Now, I don't know how they arrive at that number, but it is believable, you know, and few of them get along, especially the more conservative. They get very rigid and dogmatic. My Jesus, it's like Northern Ireland, you know. You're a Catholic or a Protestant, you don't love Jesus in the right way, they're going to blow your brains out. And it's really not funny, but forgive the nervous laughter. So, I remember when I started at ABC Radio on KLOS and doing a late night show, um, an old timer there pulled me aside before my first show and he said, "Now, remember, the two things you never talk about on this talk show is religion and politics." And I said, "What does that leave?" That's all we talk about is religion and politics. But it's because the politicians and the religious leaders are so presumptuous in embracing all of these issues. Like, we can't study morality, for example, or ethics, or or virtues unless it's in line with a specific religion. And that's nonsense. It's just, we can be ethical people. We can, uh, you know, practice our own understanding of morality and and ethics without having to be part of some organized religion. So sacred activism comes out of mysticism, which is basically a solo or small group effort. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. How can we, as spiritual seekers, as aspirants, as those who wish to grow ourselves spiritually, morally, ethically, how can we involve ourselves in the great issues of the day to work for justice and do it in a way that impacts politics, but without having to play the political game, to really stand above the lurid nature of politics and its binary, the way it's shackled itself to binary thinking. How about if I say it that way? All or nothing. It's just maddening to an intelligent, creative person to have to deal with. You're either with us or against us. I'm sorry, man, but last time I opened up a crayon box, there were a lot of different colors in that box. And there are not just shades of gray, but whole rainbows between everything and nothing. Also, I'd like to talk, excuse me, I'd like to talk about the difference today between following your mind and following your heart, although both are always involved. So we'll touch on some of that. And basically, what can we do to be more effective, to work for peace, to wage peace, and work for justice in all the different areas that I'm going to touch on today. So that's my agenda. And I hope that intrigues you enough that you'll be able to stay with us throughout today's session. Let's begin with our opening meditation. So if you get comfortable in your chairs or on the furniture, bed, sofa, meditation pillow on the floor, wherever you happen to be seated, take your position and assume the posture. Think of yourself as balanced and centered. The idea is not to hold yourself erect with a rigidity of muscle, but to balance yourself such that you can remain erect while relaxing deeply. So let your shoulders go loose. Align your head over the neck, the shoulders, above your hips. Think of yourself as being aligned. As you close your eyes now, feel the furniture supporting you. And get a sense of being grounded, connected, plugged into the earth, like a tree, deeply rooted in the earth. Our bodies, our physical bodies, are of the earth. The earth is the mother. We are made of the clay, the minerals, which we absorb through the food, the fruits and vegetables and grains that draw the minerals and nutrients from the soil. Allow the material part of you to feel plugged in or grounded or rooted in the earth. At the top of your head, feel open and receptive to a gentle precipitation downward, like a gentle rain of a life force, an energy that vivifies, illumines, and animates you. For we are both physical bodies, the mother, and energy beings, spiritual beings, the father aspect. Identify as both energy and mass, spirit and matter. And as the third element that sits in the middle, we are consciousness. We are the awareness that is of the earth and of the sky. Both things are true. For it is consciousness through which energy becomes matter, and consciousness through which matter realizes its spiritual nature. Find the balance in the middle. Identify as awareness of yourself as all three: the spiritual being, conscious of the fact that we temporarily inhabit physical form. Sit with that for a moment. Take 2 or 3 nice, slow, deep breaths. And as you exhale, feel the letting go. The letting go of deep relaxation. Feeling safe and relaxed. Pulling in strength and power as you inhale. And feel the letting go of muscular tension as you exhale. Softening, yielding to the present moment. To be here now. is to tune the instrument. Resonate like a perfectly tuned instrument to the present moment, without judgment. Having at this point begun to breathe normally, letting your body breathe itself. At a point on the bottom of your nose, or perhaps on your tummy or abdomen, where you can witness the gentle rise and fall of the breathing. Find a place to simply sit with the fact that your body breathes itself all by itself. And you understand that you are not the breather, but the awareness of the body being breathed for you. Understanding there is within the body an innate intelligence that breathes you, beats your heart, digests food, regulates body temperature, blood pressure, manages your immune system, and dozens of other responses and reactions, freeing you to reflect upon your thoughts and feelings. And even then, you recall that you are more than your thoughts and your feelings and your body. You are your awareness of your thinking. Be the watcher. Study the mind in states of deep relaxation. Not with logic and reasoning or analysis, but simply watching the mind as those intrusive thoughts petition you for your attention and deceive you at times into believing you are those thoughts. The good ones, the bad ones, the crazy ones. You are not those thoughts. You're the awareness that chooses which to affirm and which to release, don't you see? And so too with your emotional feelings. The mind would have us believe that our feelings are done to us, that we're helpless victims of the way we feel. And often, when the feeling is strong enough, we're compelled to act without thought, based purely on the way we feel. I did it because I felt like it. It's a defense. I did it because I felt like it. Who are you defending? Why do you believe you need a defense? Instead, rise above it. And from that elevated perspective, be the awareness of the feeling. See it on the horizon as it first approaches. Recognize it, own it. Understand it as your response to the world, not something done to you. Look for its significance, its meaning. Be the awareness that recognizes the symbolic nature of emotion, what it really represents. And so too with our behavior, speech and action. Be the awareness that chooses, that considers the consequences of your behavior before taking action. How will it impact other people? And then choose to initiate the most appropriate behavior for all concerned in the best interest of all concerned. Be that awareness. This awareness comes from peace. And in order to have peace, there must be justice. Without peace and our longing for justice, fairness, righteousness, we become victims of our fears and our anxieties, which shatter awareness, destroy and degrade attention and intention, leaving us feeling like we are victims of a life done to us. Then we become defensive. And that leads to becoming offensive. And we enter the fray. We struggle unnecessarily. There's a buy-in, some sort of conflict. But because we disagree, I must feel threatened somehow. Which leads to anger and hatred, animosity and contempt, hurtful language, threatening behavior, violence. And then that violence becomes organized. And we join gangs and militia groups and armies, and always manage to justify it by saying we're on the good side. And our enemies are the bad guys. While on the other side, those who simply disagree and know they're the good guys see us as the bad guys. And I want to say most humans, but in truth, most men are willing to travel long distances to foreign places to shoot and kill people they've never met for reasons they don't understand. Claiming a noble effort to defend something far away, some principle, some ethic, flag and country. People have a right to defend themselves with a minimum amount of force. The best form of self-defense is to run away. But it doesn't mean you hide. You run away to fight another day non-violently, so as not to be a hypocrite. There is no good violence, there is no good war. You defend yourself with the minimum amount of force if attacked. A tiger is a beautiful and noble beast. But if it were to attack you, you have a right to resist. But if you can escape without killing the tiger, why would you kill the tiger? That's how you fight. Protecting yourself and the innocent and the helpless, those who cannot defend themselves. This is noble. It's up to each of us to discern the distinction between truly defending ourselves and counterattacking. Learn from the martial arts. Very different than the way Western men fight. The martial artist, in all those many traditions, they do not resist, they do not oppose. They follow the chi, the flow. They bring the aggressor in the same direction they're already moving, and with a little leverage, just a minimal amount of effort, render them unable to attack further. And they do not counterattack. It's called self-defense. cannot oppose violence with violence. We cannot oppose hatred by becoming hateful. We cannot eliminate ignorance by being stupid about things. You have to breathe and relax, to expand your awareness, to raise your consciousness, and fight the good fight non-violently, from the heart, always from the heart, free from anger, free from hatred, free from fear. Breathe into that. Take a couple of nice, slow, deep breaths now to affirm to yourself this understanding. Letting go as you exhale. Commit yourself to being a spiritual warrior, willing to have your heart broken again and again. Because you recognize the ability, the tendency of the heart to continually heal and to inspire others and to persevere, working for justice in all areas from a place of peace. Could it be that simple? Peace and justice, righteousness, from which happiness and fulfillment flow. It starts with peace, feeling safe, relaxed, and fearless in all situations, facing your fear, moving directly into the fear, and as you understand it, watching it vaporize. This is the spiritual warrior. This is sacred activism. Always nonviolent, always from love, always about peace and justice, for the greater good of all. No sides, no disunity, no binary nonsense. Harmony is the path to unity. Bring this understanding with you effortlessly, nothing to carry, nothing to hold on to. Allow it to be with you as you form the intention to return to the wide awake state. 2, feel a gentle floating up, like waking naturally in the morning, moving toward the waking state. And 3, eyes open now, wide awake, eyes open now, back in the room, feeling fine, rested, refreshed, feeling better than before, much better than before. Eyes open, back in the room, better than before. Alrighty, good. In one sense, these are complicated, heady, difficult issues to deal with. But when you do something like that, a meditation like that, sit quietly, reflect on it, then it gets simple again. It also helps, I find, in my life, to reread what you think you already know. That words that have been written and said by the great thinkers, women and men, who have inspired us by writing about peace and justice. It's the animal nature in us that will fight and kill for survival. If you look in nature, there is an elevated perspective where all of the violence is seen as harmonious, and where animals consuming other animals could even be seen as a kind of transmutation or transfiguration or transcendence. The hawk takes the rabbit. Well, instead of thinking of the rabbit dying, the rabbit sacrificed its body that the hawk may live, and now together the consciousness of the rabbit and the hawk soar. The rabbit flies. And if we just think of evolution, or the whole idea of advancing through reincarnation, transmigration, karma, recognizing the impermanence and the cyclic nature of things, I'm often reminded personally of the ethic of the indigenous peoples of America, which the two parts that I think of are, number one, when the hunter, Native American hunter, drew his bow on a deer or an elk or a bison, he would ask the spirit of the animal to guide the arrow. So if he missed, he missed. So be it. The animal was not willing to give itself. But if the arrows found its mark, or the spear, or the rock, and he took the animal's life, the affirmation that was commonly said by the hunter was, "You shall live in me." Now, you don't find that ethic in factory farming, right? Where animals are treated inhumanely, and even the so-called cage-free chicken, for example, is grown in barns and these giant airplane hangar type buildings, so overcrowded they can barely move around. That's called cage-free. Like they're running around in the pasture, eating ladybugs and insects. And they're still grain-fed, and I don't need to go on about that, but it's hardly a humane way to raise animals for meat consumption, or for dairy, or for eggs, or whatever. But the ethic of "you shall live in me" is very different. And if you are a meat eater and you go to the grocery store and you grab that pack of chicken or that fish or that ground beef or whatever, because you feel you need to have that in your diet. I mean, this is a time of Ramadan. This is a time of fasting. And in Islam, if you feel that you're not able to fast because you're ill, or you've been injured, or you have some dietary restriction, there's nobody that's going to come and admonish you for your inability to fast. And so it is with vegetarianism. And somebody feel you go to an Indian restaurant, they're mostly vegetarian restaurants, but there's some meat there. It's not the eating of the meat, it's like your attitude about it. If you appreciate that the animal gave its life for you, and you have a way of knowing that the animal was raised humanely and had a happy life and didn't suffer and wasn't tortured, that makes eating meat a whole different thing. It's just not an either or. I guess that's part of what frustrates me when I hear people debate this kind of stuff is as soon as we get angry, this bears very much on our class today. Soon as we begin to, you know, get that fight or flight thing going, awareness is shattered. We get very binary, very all or nothing. All the variations and combinations and permutations, they just all fall away. And it's like the blinders go on and you just, it's everything or nothing. It's my way or the highway. And you disagree to any degree and you're wrong. And as the voices rise and people get more upset, that becomes even more entrenched because the brain thinks this isn't just boyfriend, girlfriend arguing or married couples or, guys at the club or whatever arguing with each other. This is survival. This is your best friend, your partner, your lover, your spouse, your kids, your parents are now the enemy. They're a monster coming to devour you as far as the brain's concerned. If we're going to be sacred activists and spiritual warriors, we have to avoid that level of emotional upset, don't you see? To create peace, you must come from a peaceful place. This is the first point, the biggest point that this is start here. This peace begets peace, right? So what do you do when you get frustrated and angry and when you hate hateful people? Isn't this a dilemma? Well, I'd love some feedback and comment on this when we get to the Q&A. The way emotions are so contagious. It's not just emotions, it's all kinds of behavior. You go into a room and yawn, other people will begin to yawn, even if they're not sleepy or tired, even if they haven't yawned in a year. It's a suggestion. If you start giggling for no reason, other people will start to giggle and laugh and chuckle and wonder. They have no idea what's funny. I saw some funny YouTube videos the other day. It's called the Invisible Danger Prank. Have you seen any of these? People set up a camera for the purpose of recording a video of the whole thing. And like there's usually two people in a room, and one of them, the one who's setting up the prank, suddenly gets terrified and jumps up as if there's a snake or a rat or some great danger afoot, and they jump up and start to scream, and you watch the reaction of the other person, and they immediately become as afraid as the first person, and they jump and they scream and yell, "What is it?" And they're up on the furniture, and then one goes running outdoors, the one that created the prank, and the other one goes running outdoors. What? But they're both as emotions are contagious. I mean, we're really one, right? We're all one, so it's understandable that would happen. Well, peace is also contagious, don't you see? This is Gandhi saying, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." The best thing that any one of us can do to create a peaceful world is to be peaceful people. And that requires meditation, study, and mindfulness. That's how you become peace. That's how you promote peace. That's how you make this a peaceful world. And other people will look at you, be inspired, and say, I want some of that. Because the first thing that flows from peace is happiness. How could you be happy if you're not peaceful? You see, how can you have love and happiness if you're upset? So the best thing you can do to promote peace is be peace, be peaceful, be relaxed. And that's a positive upward spiral. We talk about the vicious cycle of fear and ignorance. The way uncertainty, ignorance is a harsh word, lack of awareness, lack of understanding. I don't like using stupid or ignorant, but they're really good words. Obtuse. How about just uncertainty, unawareness, the absence of understanding? Well, that's a frightening place to be, isn't it? That's scary. But the thing about scary, fear, anxiety, stress, worry, doubt, nervousness, apprehension to panic and back, horror, terror, or mildly nervous, little or a lot, it's confusing. And so now you know even less. You're more mixed up and more confused because of all your fear and anxiety, right? Which is adding now to the fear, which makes you more ignorant and more afraid and more ignorant and more afraid. That's a downward spiral, sucking you down like one big toilet flush. Well, the complement to that is love and understanding, which is also cyclic. Each promotes the other, but it's a upward spiral. It's progressive. It's evolutionary. It's unfolding. It's redemption. It's ascension. Easter Sunday, we'll talk about the true meaning of ascension, refinement, self-realization. There's a lot of words for self-improvement. Because peace promotes understanding. The more peaceful you are, you all know what test anxiety is, performance anxiety, right? Where you know the material, you know the material, but the pressure of the test causes you to blank out. It's part of that whole fight or flight response, shutting down the frontal lobes and the cortex to bring online the primitive brain of fight or flight survival. So peace promotes understanding, brings that frontal higher brain functions online, and you get smarter and you get more insight. You see the bigger picture. It's like, oh my God, I see what's going on here. That allows you to breathe and relax and know deep peace of mind, inner peace, which promotes more understanding and more peace, more understanding. And out of this comes the whole idea of justice and a recognition that working for the greater good is not a sacrifice. You're part of the greater good. So when you work for peace in the world, when you work for justice, everybody benefits, including you. It's not like, oh, by giving up my self-interest and being more concerned about society at large, I'm going to lose out. I'm making this big sacrifice to abandon my self-interest. Nonsense. That's either or thinking. That's the binary thinking of the frightened person that promotes self-interest because they think it's either you or me. It can't be you and me. Because they're in too much danger to see you and me. So, how do we uplift this world from a you or me world to a you and me world? To be the change we want to see in the world. Now, before I go to Q&A, I want to talk about a few timely situations that concern me. The division in America, people talk about civil war. We're already in a civil war. Only instead of the South firing on Fort Sumter and the Confederacy forming armies and the Union lining up and having these insane battles with muskets, most of the shooting that's happening in the Civil War in America now is happening in schools, in churches, in shopping malls, in movie theaters. More than 3/4 of the mass shooters are far-right extremists. I won't say they're all Trump people, but how do you say it? Not all Republicans are fascists, but all fascists have found comfort in what remains of a once grand old party. You know, there used to be liberal Republicans. There really were. I'm old enough to remember that. And Republicans and Democrats worked together. But something started with Nixon, and then Newt Gingrich, and then when Trump rose to power, building on Nixon's Southern strategy and the Obama being from Kenya stuff, then it began to accelerate to the point that we're in a civil war now. It's just one side has all the guns, and they're shooting randomly at innocent people. Not all the mass shootings are politically motivated, but more than you realize. The media is constrained in reminding us that these shooters have neo-Nazi literature, whether they include Trump hats and Trump memorabilia or not. It's most of it around white supremacy and this fear that a small group of Caucasians have that a true democracy is going to eliminate their inherent superiority. I say this as a white man. I'm as white as white as white can be. Other than the fact we're all from Africa, if you go back far enough, and it breaks my heart. But as I said in the newsletter and earlier today, as spiritual warriors and sacred activists, that's how you know you're doing it right, if your heart is broken again and again and again. The good side of a broken heart when it comes to these kinds of issues is it prevents the heart from becoming concretized and inflexible. And then you become heartless, just like the people that are terrifying us or trying to terrify us. You don't want to be heartless. You want your heart to be flexible and vulnerable and break easily. It's a good thing to have a broken heart. But you don't let it stop you. You move directly into that. So you feel the pain of the broken heart, but you do not suffer because you continue to step forward peacefully, non-violently, seeking justice for one and all. These are pretty basic, fundamental American values. Peace and justice for all. We're not criminalizing the government to prosecute criminals who chose to get into politics. And Trump is just a symbol. He's just a symbol. It's so easy to be compassionate for this guy because he's so tormented. He suffers so much. Such a broken man you saw last Tuesday in that courtroom. And all the bravado and the bullying and the mean, nasty talk from this man. I know it's frightening. He scares me sometimes. He scares me sometimes too. All of that is pathos. It's just so sad that he is so terrified and torments himself so, but would never admit it. And the people around him are just looking for power. That's all they want. But it's the power that comes from a willingness to do anything, to crush people, to do whatever they need to do to get to their positions of power in government, in corporations, in churches, wherever they seek, local school boards, banning books. These are the book burners. These are people that are more afraid to have a book about the life of Rosa Parks in the school than a weapon of war. They want to protect their children from books describing America's history of racism, but not protect them from weapons of war. It's insane. This is not a political argument. This is a mental health issue. This is what happens when people counsel fear. So the two young black men that were expelled from the House of Representatives, the state house in Tennessee, it just lit a fire. This is big. This will be in the history books. If you didn't appreciate the timing of all of this and the symbolism of all of this, the significance of this, you might just see it as another episode, another event in a long history of injustice in this country, of racism, this bold racism. But as many of the pundits have said this week, increasingly the ultra-right, the neo-fascists, are doing away with the dog whistles and the coded language, and now it's just blatant Jim Crow. And being uppity is a thing in Tennessee, right? We're not going to have these uppity black men thinking that they've got a right to stand up and talk. We'll shut off their mics because we can, right? I know a racist when I see one. So do you. This is stone cold racism, nothing else. And if you consider yourself a human, you don't have to be a civil rights activist, just a living, breathing being, you're going to want to fight racism. And how do you do that? With peace and justice, nonviolently, as Gandhi and Dr. King and Thich Nhat Hanh have opposed injustice, and other great teachers. Christ, say, for Christ's sake. Jesus was very clear about this. Blessed are the peacemakers, those who seek righteousness and justice, and forgive them, for they know not what they do. That, to me, is the message of Calvary, not your blood washing away the sins of the world and all of that. The message of Calvary on this Easter Sunday is, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. They're just ignorant and foolish and frightened. That's what fuels the right. That's why they have all the guns. They're terrified. Tell a gun owner he has guns because he's frightened. He'll get angry. He'll freak out. So maybe you shouldn't tell him, but why all the guns, boys? You don't see liberal Democrats doing mass shooting. Steve Scalise got took out by some progressive Bernie Sanders supporter, but the exception proves the rule, frankly. The war against women, the war against health care, the suppression of women by the right, by the religious right, another area that we need to focus on. So part of white supremacy includes the repression of women. It's just old-fashioned authoritarianism. It's patriarchy. I don't need to teach you about patriarchy or racism. And then the third area is the fight for democracy itself. And it's not just the United States. France is on the verge of becoming a fascist country. Hungary, Turkey, these are NATO allies that are autocratic governments already. The swing to the right in America is terrifying. The people of Wisconsin just elected by, I think it was 15 points, a well-educated progressive justice to their high court. And because Republicans in the House of Representatives, the state house in Wisconsin, have a supermajority, they're already talking about impeaching her. She hasn't even done anything yet, but it's just this blatant, raw grab for power. Please don't believe that you have to get involved in politics to fight this stuff. Do it with intelligence and compassion. Come from peace and a heartfelt desire for justice. Be the change that you want to see in the world, and that is the most important, most subversive thing you can do. Beyond that, educate yourself. Reach out. Walk, march, petition, join groups, protest, boycott, write letters, call right-wing radio talk shows. Most of them won't take your call, but every once in a while there's one you could find. Letters to the editor, I guess I said that. Whatever, everything. Educate your children who don't care, or let them educate you. Don't let your friends just be racist morons. But don't argue with them. Ask questions. I think this is where I'll leave it, and we'll go to the Q&A. Ask questions. It is such a powerful form of argumentation. To stay peaceful, breathe, stay calm, don't oppose, watch your body language. Don't even sit opposite people. Sit at an angle so they don't feel so threatened, right? Be smarter than they are. And ask them why they believe what they believe. And when they answer, ask them another question, like you're me on the radio interviewing people, right? Or your favorite interviewer. Ask questions. And you don't even need to respond. You just, oh, I see. And then maybe play it back so they feel heard and understood. Model the kind of behavior that you would like to see in other people. And they're going to go, wow, I disagree with that person, but I sure would like some of whatever they got. They are so cool and never get rattled, and they seem to be really well read and smart. A lot of the fear on the right is that they fear they're being looked down on for not being well educated. The so-called low information voter. He thinks we're the well-educated, concerned people are making them feel inferior. They're bringing their sense of inferiority to the conversation and then blaming us for it. So we're elite because we read books. That doesn't make you an elitist that you read. But you don't want to reign it over them either. Like, well, if you'd only graduated from community college, maybe you'd understand. You can't talk like that. It's like, why do you believe this? Why do you feel that way? Well, what are your concerns? Well, have you think that what are the solutions of the far right? What do you think they can do for you? How can they help you? You're electing billionaires. Do you have some evidence they really care about you? Use questions. And if you have any question about that, please put it in the chat box to Hannah. Hannah's got to run early. Maybe Melinda can pick up after Hannah has to go. But put your question, your comment, a little brief synopsis or summation in the chat box. That'll help you organize your thoughts. And we'll go to that now. Hannah?
Yeah. So there's one comment from Ignacio, and then Melinda has a comment, and then Jack has a comment. So I'm going to read Ignacio's and then turn it over to Melinda to make her comment. And I will also read Jack's since it was sent to me, and then you guys can shift over to Mindy. So let's see. Ignacio said, after 38 years of learning from you, I am still surprised to see how you bring just the right subjects in your talks. The subject is just right as usual. Spiritual activism is actually the sign of the times, in tune with current events. Your flow is outstanding. Congratulations, Michael. And
Thank
then
you.
Mindy just says she has a comment, and then Jack's is going to be about overcoming the world.
Good. Why not?
So maybe we should go with that one first. Anyways, there you are.
Thank you. Melinda. Dr. Mindy, are you there?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you want to comment on Ignacio's at all first, Michael?
Well, not really. Just thank you, man. That's beautiful.
Cool.
I'm trying to model what I want others to do, which is stay calm and speak from the heart. And when we feel anger and we find ourselves hating those who hate, I mean, that's a real oxymoron. That's not the right word. It's an enigma. It's a paradox. How can you hate hateful people? How can you hate hate? You see, it's impossible to hate hatred. So that energy needs to be transmuted. When you find yourself getting angry, getting frustrated, getting frightened, or even becoming hateful, you got to breathe and relax and channel that energy through the heart into wisdom, into an understanding of how you can be more effective in the moment. And just thank you, Ignacio. I appreciate those comments. Melinda?
Michael, I just wanted to comment, have your take on the role that organized religion has always played in melding cultural and family influences. It seems like there is that tie that is a little bit separate from the governing bodies, so to speak, of the religions. And for instance, in Central and South America, there's a lot of Aztec influence and spiritualism, and I find that a fascinating part to look at in my Catholic background, that although I don't participate, there's a comfort in the Catholic ritual because it reminds me of my family.
So Could you restate the question for me?
Well, it isn't a question so much as I almost want to challenge you on seeing a part of organized religion that I feel is really important, that is apart from the dogma per se, and it's what gives people individually in that sense of belonging and tying to their roots.
Yeah, I can do that. I'm happy to do that. It's a little bit like reporting good news. Like, here are all the children who were not shot today. Here's all the dogs that were not lost. It goes without saying, but you're asking me to say that there's lots of good in organized religion. People
Well, that's
don't.
not even my point, Michael. Excuse me for interrupting you. It's not that there's good in it. It's that the roots are so deep. And I think to recognize that helps to understand the role it plays.
For better and for worse.
Right. It's just part of us. I think people have always had that yearning to join some kind of a group with those common beliefs, and that goes way back.
Even Buddhism has a Sangha. The three jewels of Buddhism are Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Sangha is the community. But within any institution is the question of, is it democratic? Does the institution reflect the membership? Or is it autocratic, where the authority at the top down, the membership is expected to conform to the authority of the institution? And then, of course, there's all of the combinations and variations where there's a little of both. Raised Catholic, I found it to be exceedingly dogmatic in my experience, in my parish. I was told what movies. You would go to church on Sunday, they would tell you what movies you could watch and what movies you could not watch. I remember a lecture, I called it a lecture, I guess a sermon, a homily on the dangers of Jungian psychology, because it was mystical and at one point made reference to snakes. And the Vatican had decided that Carl Jung, the great psychoanalyst, was a dangerous influence. That's overstepping its boundaries. And these institutions are tax-free and meddling in politics. They can do whatever they want until they attempt to replace democracy with theocracy. On the right now, we have evangelicals en masse who believe only Christians should be allowed to vote. That is not something I'm making up. It's not an exaggeration. And the televangelists who run these organizations have collected for themselves hundreds of millions of dollars. They have private jets, sometimes more than one. They live in mansions. They drive expensive cars. But somehow are such effective con men, they get people to believe they're giving money to God. Like, why does God need your money? It's certainly not going to the poor and the needy, or if it is, it's just a token after the preacher pays his mortgage and buys his Ferrari. It's disgusting. It's harmful. And it's eroding our democracy when they look at the Supreme Court. This decision on, what's this medication, Melindy? This metapristol that they just banned, the court in Texas just banned this week, the abortion pill. You know the name of it that I'm talking about, Melinda?
I can't pronounce it either, but you're right about the function of it.
The church has no right. They can advise their parishioners, but they have no right to get involved in politics. That is a violation of the First Amendment. First Amendment is not only freedom of religion, it's freedom from religion. The country was founded by people escaping religious persecution. That it is an institution, and that we find comfort in ritual and tradition and, oh hell, just being a member of a group, I certainly understand. But it has to be democratic if it's going to coexist with harmony in our society from the ground up. It has to be responsive, just like government, to the desires of the people. Leadership is important, setting a tone is important, but it has to be a balance, not some dogmatic, autocratic organization that is undermining our very democracy and making evil out of anybody who disagrees. I heard a Christian preacher go on recently. He was instructing his parishioners about the coexist bumper stickers and how that was a satanic plot to destroy Christianity. Coexistence. You know, that bumper sticker that's got the Star of David and the Islamic crescent moon and the Christian cross and the Buddhist Dharma wheel, and it's got all these symbols of all the various religions around it. And then it says coexist. And this guy was saying it was a demonic, satanic effort to destroy Christianity, the one true religion. And I think of myself as a Christian. I'm also a Sufi and a Buddhist and a Jew and respect all of the religions, but I don't see my understanding of Christ as being threatened by any other religion in any way at all. I think it's phony. It's these are crusaders that are trying to make trouble just to garner power. When the church crosses into politics, that's the red line, as far as I'm concerned. That's stay off my First Amendment. Speak freely, but First Amendment includes a lot of things: the right to protest, to redress the government, petition the government for grievances. But freedom of religion means freedom from religion. And maybe we should just tax them if they're going to get involved in politics, because that would sure settle a national debt right off the bat. Tax these billionaire preachers, imagine. So I have mixed feelings about organized religion. I have respect for religious people, all of them, without judgment, without hesitation. If somebody is looking for love, the source of the love in their heart and the longing for justice, they have my respect. But whatever the religion, whether they're religious or not religious, that's what I look for. Are you a kind, loving, compassionate person? And I'm okay with you. You have any follow-up on that?
I respect your position. What my dilemma is when I go into a family group that is practicing religion, I've had to find a way to see what the gain is there, because I agree with what you said also. So there's that push and pull within me that wants to kind of get my back up, and I have come to see that there's a comfort in the ritual that I don't really share, but I can kind of feel it. So I'm grateful for being able to not raise a ruckus when I'm at a family event.
I'm not sure comfort is a virtue. I don't know that comfort is a great indicator that we're doing well. That's something I would suggest that we both think about a little bit. Is comfort really what we're looking for? Happiness, yes, as a result of growing and evolving and redeeming ourselves. But I don't think comfort is a path to refinement. So let's think about that. We'll talk about it again.
Fair enough. And Jack has a comment. Let me just pull it up here. His comment is overcoming the world. Maybe he wants to flesh that out a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, hi.
Hi,
Well,
Jack.
it's Easter, and so I wanted to say something about Jesus' comment when he said, "I have overcome the world." And of course, I'm a priest, but I look at these things as if they're true at all, they have to be universal truths, and not some truth that some specific group of people own. They're more like archetypal truths. And in a sense, they've been in our culture long enough that they've kind of been absorbed, I think, in a sort of more general way and not a specific, in quote, Christian way. But at any rate, so this is shortly before the crucifixion. I'm pretty sure he knew the bad things were coming. This is a man who had poked the bear quite a bit. He had people talk about him as a man of love, but he spoke viciously about people in power, brutally, especially about religious people in power.
Yeah.
He did not mince words.
He said they will crush you and never lift a finger to help you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he called them whited sepulchers, which is really sweet. They would whitewash the outside of the tomb, and inside was rotting flesh. So, but at any rate, at this point, he was speaking to his people, telling them that, well, bad things were coming. There would be tribulation. There were going to be trouble, but not to be afraid, because they were with him, and he said, "And I have overcome the world." Well, what did he mean by that? Well, he certainly didn't mean that he had left the world, because he was deeply engrossed with it, and even with its conflicts and its trouble and its difficulty. This isn't somebody that just, I don't know, went to a mountain and sat there. He didn't do that. But it meant that he was able to, in some way, maintain a consciousness, awareness of what's really important, which is love. And that recognition that I believe when he's saying, "I have overcome the world," that he was able to see that part of himself in others, to the point where, at least according to tradition, while he was crucified, after being tortured, he was not, if I was crucified after being tortured, I would just be screaming, or, I wouldn't be able to speak to people, the person next to me who had defended him, the two thieves, and tell one of them that you will be with me in paradise. And to pray for the people who are torturing him.
Yeah.
Father, they know not what they do. So he was able to maintain, in the worst possible state, an awareness of what's actually really important, that there's something more important, and not to either run away from it or deny it, or just attack it, but to maintain that deeper truth, to maintain love. And I think that's what we're trying to do. to maintain love. And I think when we do that, we do overcome the traps of the world that sort of drag us into its terror and its chaos. I mean, I get angry really easily, frankly, especially about injustice.
Yeah.
I mean, I find myself, I see these things, and it's really hard for me not to wish the worst possible
I know.
on these people.
Yeah.
But that will never bring us to where we want to be.
Then you become the enemy.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that, especially on Easter. As I said before, I've felt for some time that's the message of Calvary. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's compassion, having been nailed to a cross, tortured, as you said, crown of thorns, humiliated, the unspeakable pain of all of that. And then it reminds me of that news story a few years ago where these Amish people forgave the shooter and even showed up at the funeral of the shooter that had killed a whole bunch of their kids. And I thought, that's Christianity. Not buy me another jet airplane. That's Christianity, that level of forgiveness and compassion. So to me, that's the message of Calvary. This stuff about blood washing away sins is not in the Bible. It's a bunch of made up reason for the church to exist stuff. Although if people want to believe it, worship, ritual, communion, I'm not opposed to anything. Fine, have at it. But saying I have overcome the world reminds me first of the admonition to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but render unto God what is God's. It's an understanding that we're energy in form, and the material is impermanent, and the energy is infinite and eternal. We're spiritual beings. I've overcome the world is I know I'm not my body. I'm not Jesus. I am the Christ, but I'm not Jesus. I don't need this meat body in heaven. To me, it's obvious Christ survived the crucifixion. He showed up 3 days later in a body, told Thomas to put his hand in the wound. Apparitions don't do that. You can't touch or feel an apparition. It wasn't a ghost, it wasn't a spirit, it wasn't an apparition. It was a physical body. So to try and explain that, the church says, oh, he took that meat body with him to heaven. Really? And what's he going to do with it? And how is he going to sustain it with food? And if you think you're going to see the face of God, really? Are we talking about it's like, do you see the radio waves going through the air? You know radio's real, but it's invisible. You know the wind is real. You see it in the trees, but it's invisible. Surely you can understand. Christ explains. Actually, I can't quote it chapter and verse now, but he says, no, God is not flesh and blood. He's spirit. He's like the wind. He's very specific and very clear about it, and yet there are people that will not be cremated because I need my meat body on the other side. No, you don't. So, to me, to overcome the world just means I'm not this material illusion. I mean, we are, but we're so much more than that. And while the body falls away and the whole material world is in perpetual flux and impermanence, there's a spirit, a love that is eternal. Love is consciousness. It's a great place to end the class today. In philosophy, it's consciousness, it's awareness. In religion, it's called love. but it's the same thing. And you can shortcut through a lot of spiritual growth by making that connection. Love is awareness. Awareness of what? Awareness that there is nothing that is separate from love. Love is the magnetic, cohesive agent that makes the appearance of multiplicity into one whole thing. Love is the glue. That's why it heals, it redeems, it uplifts. Let's be clear, love is consciousness. To raise consciousness or expand awareness is to become more loving. That's a quality of peace. That's where our happiness is found, and justice will flow from that. So that's where I'm going to leave it for the day today. Thanks for that comment. And Melinda, thank you. And Hannah is off to another meeting, but my thanks to her too. Happy Easter, everybody, and Passover, and blessed Ramadan, and most importantly, perhaps the spring equinox. That's what this is all about. Or not the equinox, is it the, yes, it's not the solstice, it's the equinox, the vernal equinox. That's, if you've ever wondered what the bunny rabbit is about, or all of these eggs, this is a fertility festival. It's the coming of spring. It's a beautiful time, even out here in the desert. The wildflowers are blooming. And it's a time of rebirth, and the whole idea of aligning the crucifixion and the resurrection, the ascension of Christ and our spiritual nature with fertility and the coming of spring makes sense to me. Just like aligning the birth of Christ with the winter solstice and the birth of light, so to speak, which is, again, you can see Hanukkah also all about light and the candles and the oil, and these pagan holidays. Is co-opted, too hard a word to use. They were co-opted by the churches so that the organized religion would be more popular with the common people. So happy vernal equinox as well. And thank you very much for being here. I appreciate very much. Namaste, aloha, salam. Please unmute and say hello and goodbye to everybody, and have a wonderful Easter week, and we'll see you next Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Michael, as always.
Bye.
Thank you, Michael. Happy Easter.
I'm honored to be here.
Happy Easter, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, everybody.